Welcome to Yes Also, I'm Susie Barrett. My guest today is Philip Labus. He is a very successful singer-songwriter who is also a musical improviser. His regular musical shows at UCB are Hump Night and the musical version. He has played with Baby Wants Candy, and as a singer-songwriter, he opened for Jason Mraz on tour. We go pretty deep here about musical improv, but also about the nature of creativity and life as an artist, and I really hope you go check out some of his music. You will be an instant fan, I promise. For our subscribers, we have some fantastic bonus content of Philip giving some tips and tricks for how to do better musical improv. And if you're not yet a subscriber, head over to yesalso.supercast.com and get access to all of our bonus episodes, our Q&As, video footage, tons of stuff. And why not follow us on Instagram at yesalsopod? I think that's enough preamble. Here's Philip. Thank you for being here, Philip.
Thanks for having me.
You're the first person that I've had on that is a musical improviser, or I've had musical improvisers. Jess McKenna was on, but you also you improvise music with, like, you're the accompanist on some shows, and that's how I've worked with you. You were like improvising sitcom theme songs on the sitcom show for a while.
Yeah.
Or you still do.
No, not really.
I want to start there. I want to talk about your musical background, how you got into musical improv. What's your path there?
Yeah, so I started taking classes at UCB when I didn't get onto my college improv team, or I got onto one but not the other, but I couldn't get onto the one I wanted. And there was this whole...
Was that here or in New York?
It was here in LA at USC.
Okay.
And I didn't have... because I hadn't gotten into the improv scene there that I wanted to, I was feeling a little like left out. Didn't really have friends the way I wanted to, so I was like, well, I'll go get some. And so I started taking classes at the Groundlings, taking the bus from USC, and wasn't really gelling there, couldn't figure out why. And then somebody there was like, you should go check out UCB. And I went and checked out. The very first show I ever saw in LA was a musical improv show. It was Diamond Lion.
Oh, yeah.
Which now doesn't exist, but it used to be one of the first musical improv teams. And they, through like happenstance and energy, I was like seated right on stage in the two positions closest to the stage where everyone can see you.
Yeah.
And immediately, because Thomas Middleditch used to play that show, and people thought we looked, or at least their cast thought we looked alike, they were immediately like making fun of him and pulling me into the show. And I left the show basically and they made me sing at one point.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they really pulled me in, and I left the show basically being like, well, I want to do that for the rest of my life.
Meaning, I want to sit on stage and non-consensually be included in a show.
Yeah, and I just kept going, trying to get the magic back.
Right. Even shows where they don't open up the sides of the stage, you would drag your own chair
I'd bring
up
my
there.
own chair.
Yeah.
If there wasn't a singing show, I'd be like, sing!
Yeah.
Kind of force my perspective. But I kept... So I started taking the classes and really connected with that right away. And then basically right when I finished the classes, there were musical improv classes, but I didn't get involved with that. I just started going to a lot of musical improv shows, and I started I knew people who did musical improv, and I just started joining any other teams they were on because I wanted to get to know them. And so
it's a real long con there.
Kind of, yeah. I was very intentional with it. Even though I didn't know I was doing it at the time, it was kind of like half conscious.
Yeah.
I just knew I wanted to do more musical stuff. And so I joined a team called Quick and Funny Musicals, which was a written show that's been around for ages and has had a bunch of cool, famous alumni. And then from there, I got connected with a bunch of people that did Baby Wants Candy and Magic to Do, which were kind of at the time the only shows that you could do musical improv at UCB. And so I started being asked to guest on those shows.
Yeah.
And then, it just kind of spiraled from there.
And I should pause to say your career, like your double life with this, is you are a singer-songwriter.
Yes.
And an incredible one.
Oh, thank you.
I am such a fan of your music. And I want to, maybe we'll pause here in the playback of this and cut to a song of yours so people can hear just like a little clip.
Sure.
So let's cut to that now.
1, 2, 3, go!
Silly Billy giggling under cotton, a very goofy ghost for Halloween. In the living room as I fall asleep, the last thing that I hear. An orange in my sock on Christmas morning. I made it to midnight, New Year's Eve. I've got a new sister, but she's boring. All she ever does is cry and sleep, but they keep her around. And the small things are the big things, and the big things get small. I miss being a child, running wild, cannonball.
Great, we're back. You're such an impressive singer-songwriter, like on the level to me of like Sufjan Stevens.
Wow, thank you.
And so prolific. You put out albums of songs one after the other. So yeah, what an inspired genius you are.
Oh, wow, thank you.
But I say that to be like, you're not just someone who's like, oh yeah, happened to be sitting on the stage and now I'm a musical improviser. It's like you also are just a very talented songwriter.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's true. There was another half to this, which was all as this was going on. I had a music career. I was trying really hard in every which way to build a music career. I mean, when I say that commercially, but I had an internal relationship with music that was growing and I was writing a lot, but nothing really kicked off in terms of like building. I was basically doing that from when I graduated college until the lockdown, basically commercially unsuccessfully. I was releasing music. It wasn't really connecting with people. I wasn't having anything breakthrough beyond like my friends would listen to it, my family would listen to it, the way I think the vast majority of people release music.
Right.
But during the lockdown, kind of two things happened, which was I had a lot of time to like think, write, process, and reevaluate what I was interested in musically, and TikTok suddenly like skyrocketed in popularity, and so I started writing a lot more material and kind of in a new vein, in a new style it basically took me like 8 years to figure out what I was doing. Like, okay, like I think this is really what I tried everything else, and then eventually I was like, this works.
I tried heavy metal alien rap.
Yeah.
I tried.
Well, you joke, but like I experimented with like kind of electric pop. I experimented with trying to do, when I was in college, it was very popular. All the people I was friends with were doing this super production heavy, like almost, just super oriented towards like pop production, singer-songwriter stuff, and it was always called like, bedroom pop or like electro pop. And so because you're influenced by your community, I thought, well, maybe I'm supposed to do that too. And it took me a long time to go, well, you know what actually I really love is I love like musical theater and like acoustic folk and all this stuff that's not really popular. It's all kind of like had its heyday either in the 60s or earlier. And so I was like, well, maybe I'll just do that because it's the lockdown, the world's ending, and it doesn't really matter what I do.
Right. It's like a thought experiment. Like if this was the last month you had on Earth, what would the music that you play be?
Pretty much. Yeah. Exactly. I was like, and I had already failed for years. So I was like, I can't, the worst thing that can happen is I'll just be myself still. Like things will be as they are. So I started writing this kind of new material that was more driven by my influences in musical theater and in folk, and that I put it on TikTok and it just super exploded. Like got these huge following and fan base that I'd never had before. And so, to me, I was like, oh, well, like how nice. It was a blessing because I was like, oh, I actually like had something hit with something I love and can connect to, as opposed to what I'm trying to do or pretending to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost a fable, like with a moral at the end. It's
yes.
like, truly like do what feels true and good to you, and the audience and things will follow eventually. Like people
Yes.
will find you if you're doing what you're meant to be doing or what feels most aligned with your spirit or whatever.
Yes, and like ringing your bell. But it is
Yeah.
funny because at the time I was doing all those other things, I was like, this is what I'm meant to be doing.
Right.
So it's like it can be a bit of a head trip, especially if you're not having the success you want, where you're like, well, I think I'm doing what I'm quote unquote supposed to be doing.
You're right. Yeah. It is like in hindsight, you can look back and go, oh, but this feels more aligned with me. But at the time, that felt aligned. And
Yes.
it's not until you're further down the road that you realize. And we do, as creative people in the world, and as people who have committed to a life of being an artist, we sit in a weird tension point at all times where it's like, well, I'm not getting cast, but I don't want that to be a reflection on me personally. So I'm just going to keep auditioning and blah, blah, blah. But in this case, it's like, well, I'm not connecting with an audience. Do I just keep pursuing it and stick with it? Or do I change what I'm doing?
Oh, yeah.
That's a tough puzzle to solve.
And all creatives are faced with contradictory advice in that area constantly of like, be adaptable, look at the world, like be a part of the world. Like if something isn't working, iterate, change. And at the same time, we're told, ring your bell. If it's not working yet, it's just because you haven't been like, tuned into your frequency long enough. People get really woo woo about it.
Yeah.
But I think for me, it was definitely a combination of the things, because like it would be ridiculous to suggest that I didn't like learn from the things that went well and go, oh, okay, well, this clearly like is resonating with people. So I can at least, I would love to hear if you've done this in your career, but I feel like, because I've been an actor too, like for many, many years, and did these audition after audition after audition after audition going, well, people say to like bring yourself to your audition, but myself isn't getting any work.
Right.
So I think the music side is a little bit like, firstly, I had control over it. Always. I could always do whatever I wanted because I'm not signed. I'm completely independent.
Right.
So I always have total creative control. And at the same time, it wasn't, what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say the nothing was connecting with people until it was, but I had to like learn from that and change and iterate a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't totally have that experience because also like auditions are like you have the least amount of creative control. Like
Yes.
you're dealing with someone else's script and someone else's vision and whatever. But the closest analogy that I have to that is like I started booking a ton of commercials the second that I stopped treating each audition like it was something really important. And when I started, but I think that helped make me more myself
Yeah.
because I wasn't like strangle holding these things and trying to like project something or find the right comedy or whatever. When I started treating it like I'm going to the DMV to run an errand, I have to go to the DMV and then I have to go to this audition and then I have to pick up my dog from daycare. And then, when it became an errand, I started booking because
Yeah.
it was more casual and more myself. Yeah.
We share a community of so many like geniuses and talents. I think something uncomfortable that is hard to reconcile is that it's a lot more luck than we think.
Right.
I think.
It's a ton of luck.
Yeah.
It's a ton of luck. And, it is also like hard work and persistence and talent and all of those things, being nice to work with. Like it is all of those things. And on top of it, it's luck.
Yeah.
Because I know plenty of people who are all of those things, but also have not had the luck of
Yeah.
like getting cast in a big thing or whatever. It's
Yeah.
like, there's no... Yeah, if we could figure this out, we could really market a product here. If
We've got a
knew.
pill.
Yeah, we've
Yeah.
got a pill.
The last thing I wanted to say about this in this area was that I also think success can be a little bit of a trap sometimes, at least commercial or like internet success. Because talking about people who like, I know a decent amount of people who like blew up on the internet at the same time that I did, just because there were so many new users on TikTok. And I have a friend who like got all this following and content for like making stuff about how they have IBS. and like it's like a trap. Like no one wants to hear from them unless they're talking about their IBS.
Right.
And so and you know what? Like if they can lean into that and have a whole career around that, like I guess shout out, I guess like do what you got to do.
Right.
But it's like you have to also hope that like whatever bell you're ringing is actually like the one you would want people to know you for.
Yeah. That's a great point. Then that becomes the equivalent of a record studio telling you what to make.
Yeah.
The audience is dictating like, no, we only want stomach ache content.
Yes.
Yeah.
Quite literally, I watched it happen with them, and they've reconciled it and like find their own medium success in other things, but
Yeah.
it's just fascinating.
Yeah, that is. And a great thing to point out. That's a little bit like careful what you wish for.
Yes.
And it is like, do you want an audience or do you want to just like do what you like? And that if the audience follows, then that's good.
Yes.
What is that for you? Would you trade one for the other? Like, is having this big audience and this big following so important that even if you got really bored with the kind of music you're making, you would stick with it to have this audience?
Well, I think we see artists do both. Like we've seen plenty of artists pivot really hard from what everyone liked that
Sure.
they did to the absolute anger of their fans. You know, like only their first 3 records were great, right? Like,
Right.
And then they went off and insert whatever.
And some are able to leap the chasm. Jefferson Airplane and Jefferson Starship, both great iterations.
Yeah, yeah.
Radiohead pretty much became like almost fully electronic when they like crossed over into Kid A territory and whatever. But
and people went with them, some,
Yeah.
and then others said this doesn't
this
work.
is too beep boop. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, I think I would be lucky if fans came with me wherever I'm going, but I don't need them to. I think I hold to the same philosophy I had when I wasn't popular, which is this is really for me, because it was always the thing I was doing on the side. In a way, like I had this career as an actor or what I thought I was supposed to do, a career as a writer. I wrote for TV for a second. Like I was doing, what I thought someone who graduated with a degree in theater from USC like did. Like I was on this track, and then music was like what I did to feel free and to feel alive and that no one could tell me how to do. And so I think that relationship to myself, to the music, is maybe more important than like the commercial relationship. And also I have to have faith that every time I followed my gut, people then followed me. Like whenever I'm more attuned to what I was interested in, people followed me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that. That's so cool that you had success in the acting, writing world, and music was purely creative outlet and creative joy. And now this is like even bigger than those other things.
Yeah, definitely bigger. And it's like you have to like follow where the love is, like, or like what's loving you back. Like
Right.
if I had this happen and then I'd been like, well, this is getting in the way of my, like, I need to double down on writing that screenplay.
Right.
I like wouldn't have these records that I love and that like mean something to people. And so because I was like waiting for a executive at a Netflix to like green light my spec script.
Right.
Right. So, having something I have control over, like, and that's the benefit also of having hard skills. Like hard skills, play guitar, play piano, play bass, program drums, produce, mix, work with, arrange, write sheet music. Like those are hard skills that like I can finish a record by myself if I have to. Yeah.
Hard skills and difficult skills.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
hard 2 ways.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about the overlap between music and improv.
Yeah.
Yeah. He lights up.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. The overlap both in terms of the practice of it, like doing musical improv. I
Yeah.
wanted to dive into.
Yeah.
But also where those skill sets or that place in your brain, what like the overlap, almost experientially or philosophically, like where those live in the same space.
I think philosophically, experientially, that's a good way to put it. That makes me think that both times I'm at my best with those, whether it's like writing work or doing really good musical improv, both feel like they're at like the tip of the mind, like kind of just a tiny bit beyond the conscious mind. I've been thinking a lot in preparation for taping this about like what actually is happening in my mind when I'm doing improv, and what's happening when I'm doing okay improv versus good improv, or what I experience as good to me. And I think it's the same as when I think I'm writing a good song, where it is like simultaneously like hyperconscious and non-conscious. Like it's the least path from the idea that's like almost in the air, like everyone feels it the beat before it happens, and then it like comes out. And I feel like that process happens when I'm writing a song. Like it's not trance-like, because it's very conscious and it's very wordy and it's very I'm there thinking of rhymes. Sometimes I'm on Rhyme Zone, like using a rhyming dictionary. So it can be very utilitarian, which is much like the utilitarian parts of doing improv, of like relying on those trained skills of like, we're gonna do baseline reality, we're gonna listen and respond, we're going to if we don't know what the other person's putting out there, we're gonna clarify. Like these are like the baseline things, but the creative act where something sparks, or where a rhyme pops to mind, or a funny idea comes to mind, I think they share a lot of that like same ineffable magic.
Yeah, it's like a halo around everything else, and if you can like get your lightning rod in the right place, you can like grab whatever comes in. And it's so cool that all of our brains bring different things in. It's truly one of my favorite things about improvising is being an audience to the people I'm on stage with, and being like, whoa, I can't believe they just said that, or like, oh, what a fun idea we can play with now.
And I feel like another shared element between those two is that the personal is nearly always the best. Like, I feel like one of the things I've become much more comfortable with, and now that I'm coaching musical improv for the first time, I often bring up in coaching, is that it always is like whatever's the personal idea that sparked within you, the whether it's the personal story or we all tend to have these like idiosyncrasies, and it's usually the idiosyncrasies that end up being the best work, as opposed to what we think like should go in that slot, that justification, especially. Yeah. Of like, what do you think? Like you, Philip, and so.
And talk about bringing yourself to the role, or bringing yourself to the work. It's like, what you think and feel, or the specifics that you come to the stage with from your past, or the things that you've been interested in or curious about. Like that is all like a very specific cocktail that is Philip. Yeah. And that bubbles up in this scene.
And it's true, and in lyric writing too. Like I think a lot of the most successful lyric writers of all time, their lyrics are very idiosyncratic. They have this quality of we describe them as universal, yet when you look at the words word to word, they're often, very idiosyncratic. Some of the songs we describe as being some of the most beautiful, Suzanne by Leonard Cohen. Right. Like an incredibly personal, specific, idiosyncratic song. Right. Full of specifics about one circumstance.
And full of non-rhymes.
Yes, also full of non-rhymes. It doesn't rhyme. Hallelujah, right? I'm on a Leonard Cohen kick, I guess.
Right.
But like
any Joni Mitchell song,
a terrific example, like full of these,
Let's go down to the Mermaid Cafe. I'll buy you a bottle of wine. We'll laugh and toast to nothing and smash our empty glasses down. Yeah,
it's like it's incredibly specific. Yeah. It's like talking about her specific experience, in the blue TV screen, right? Light. I drew a map of Canada, Canada, with your name sketched on it twice. Yeah. It's like you couldn't write something more specific. Never in a million years of me typing like a monkey at the typewriter would I write that specific set of, because it's...
Nor could you probably draw a map of Canada. No offense, but yeah.
with a typewriter? Terrible.
Right.
So it's like it, and yet when you listen to it, it's the specificity of it through their eyes that makes it, there's the longing and the intensity. And I think it's the same is true of the funniness. Like, I was, when when I coach and I ask people, they'll do a justification, and I'll be like, hey, what if we rewind like a beat and you gave me like what your real world justification was? 9 times out of 10, that's always funnier.
Right.
For reasons that are kind of hard to explain.
Right. Well, the other, if they're filtering it, the other becomes a game of telephone. If it's like, okay, I'm one step removed from this character, and then I have to think of something that they're doing. It's like a little bit watered down.
Yeah.
Or like you're already inventy because you're thinking of what you should be saying based on what you think that person is.
Yes.
Versus just saying something that's true for you and allowing that to be also true for the character.
Yes.
But I think there's room for both types of thing. But yeah, for justifications, I think something that lives closer to you is always better. Because yeah, you're looking for a real human being reason why someone's doing something.
Yeah.
So like, why would you? Yeah.
Yeah. Why would you? Sometimes just to let someone go, why would I? It can be really helpful.
Yeah. Why might I set this box on fire right now?
Yeah.
I used to do an exercise with groups that I coached where we would stand in a circle and someone would get in the middle and people from the outside would fire questions at them. So they'd be like, why is there an upside down fire truck on your lawn? And they have to give like a grounded justification for it. So they'd be like, oh, they're shooting a movie and I'm renting out my yard for it,
Yeah.
and trying to, it's the game becomes twofold. Like the group on the outside is trying to think of the most absurd stuff. And then the person in the middle is really trying to make a boring, grounded thing. But yeah, it teaches that skill of like, no, it can be real. It can be normal.
Yes.
Yeah.
And to not be scared also.
Yeah.
Just through a process of exposure, just to be like, you can do it. Like however crazy it feels, like it can always be roped into your game or your whatever.
It can always fit.
Yeah.
So when you started your journey with Baby Wants Candy, like what was that experience like for you? Did it feel like the golden doors blew open and you were like, I'm here? Like because you talked about like sitting on that stage, being like included in Diamond Lion or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I felt like I was very much thrown in the deep end and had to learn to swim because I was playing with the players who were my heroes at the time, and I felt pretty green. But I just kind of had to have a philosophy that like, look, I'm getting the shot to do the show. I'm going to full send it. And playing with players that play really hard, for lack of a better word, does step up your game because you see them playing with their full chest, and it really says like, well, you either got to like step in and engage, or you kind of have to like step out of the way, because like people are playing game really really hard and they're moving really fast and with confidence, and so that I felt like was great training. But it definitely like happened on the job. Yeah.
It occurs to me that another place that music overlaps with improv is in the commitment. Like you can't half sing a song, or I guess you can, but if you're going to do a song. Yeah, you've seen it.
Yeah.
But for the most part, if you're going to do a song, you've got to dive in and do it.
Yes.
Do you feel like at this point, when you had started musical improv, at that point, had you already been playing music like as a singer-songwriter in front of audiences for a while?
Yes. Well, I was a busker and street performer for years and years.
My gosh.
So I used to play in front of what was formerly the Staples Center, now the Crypto.com Arena. And I played on Santa Monica Pier for many years. I also played on 3rd Street Promenade for many years. And so
what a character builder.
Yeah.
Wow.
When I tell you that like playing a UCB show is kind of real easy once you've played 2 hours on the Santa Monica Pier, it's simply so punishing. Like you are in a vicious fight for attention in a context where people think that you are a beggar. Like the people, like busking culture is different in Europe. There's a little bit more respect for it as like a practice. Here, people really sometimes put it on par with like begging for money.
Right.
It's very much not. It has like a wonderful history, and I think it's like a really beautiful part of culture
Yes.
that people often don't appreciate.
It's wonderful. Like
Yeah.
street theater
Street art.
is a gift to the community.
Yes.
But yeah, I see what you're saying. Like people on Santa Monica Pier are like, oh, this homeless guy who lives on the beach is, I'm
is
saying
trying
that
to-
being.
yeah,
I know,
absolutely.
Yeah.
No, it's quite. I mean, and to be fair to those people, I could be playing in the spot right next to someone who was like an unhoused person, like barely playing a guitar,
Yeah.
sort of like using it as a context to ask for money.
Right.
And so,
And I want to be clear, my perspective is not, fuck, this is like homeless. Yeah. No,
Absolutely.
like, obviously, like, yeah, I
No,
just
no.
want to be clear about that. Yeah.
absolutely. But it's, I bring all of that up only to say that it is, that is such a like war of attrition and such a, it was hard. Like it's a hard gig. And so, bringing it back to doing improv, like I did feel very confident on stage, and I felt very confident as a musician. And so playing these shows where maybe I wasn't the most confident yet as a improviser compared to, other players I was playing with who had 10 or 20 years of experience on that stage playing that show, I knew that eventually we were going to sing. And as long as we were going to sing, I had been making up funny songs since I was 10 years old, and I had been writing songs that were funny or not funny my entire life. And so it was something I was incredibly comfortable in, that I knew, and I felt comfortable failing in too. Like and I've only become more comfortable in like, oh, I missed the rhyme. Oh, well, like,
Yeah.
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to Leonard Cohen, and it doesn't matter to me. Like,
Yeah.
it's fine.
Yeah, and if you tell the audience that this was on purpose or it wasn't on purpose, but what a funny goof, whatever. Like, but if you stick that landing rather than hit it apologetically and shrinking from it like it's something you did wrong,
Yeah.
then it doesn't matter. It's part of the joy of it.
I played a show 2 days ago where I think twice in the show I fully biffed it. Like I had nothing. I happened to be singing like 2 solos or 3 solos in that show because it was a 4-person team, small team, more stage time for everybody. And I was just, my brain was getting tired, and I biffed it. And I, after the show, I felt like, that was an amazing show. It wasn't a focus. It was fine because it was like collectively we had a great show. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I think.
I mean, that is the attitude to have rather than microscope your like
Yeah.
feeling like
Oh
your
my God.
brain was too tired or that you came up short or something.
It's more notable in musical improv, I think. Like if you're in conversation with someone and you just happen to go, yeah, I don't know. Like you're supposed to give another funny example. Like here is where a funny line would go in the scripted version of the scene, and you can't think of maybe like a heightening.
Right.
It's so much more conversational to simply go, or yeah, something else. I don't know.
There's a lot more fat in an improv scene that's not musical improv.
Yeah.
In musical improv, you trim all the fat because
Yeah.
it's like set up, rhyme, and all of it has to be on plot and on character game and heightening emotionally. It a lot of times rhymes. It fits within the meter of the song, so that train is coming. You can't
Yeah.
buy yourself a pause like you can in a regular scene. In a regular improv scene, if I don't quite know what to say, I can buy myself time. I can pour a whiskey. I can,
Yeah. Whereas in a musical improv scene, you can see it sometimes when someone, like if they aren't there yet, but like the song, it's like it's time to sing again. Maybe like you did a chorus and now it's time to sing again, but like you don't know yet. That music's just plodding along saying, this
Yeah.
is where it should go. This is
yeah.
where you should be funny. And you're like, oh boy. But it's also, I think I am very drawn to, like I said, I feel like my strongest work is when I'm reducing thinking time in a way. Some of the earliest notes I got as an improviser was often that I was quite heady and quite, as opposed to like getting in my body or just like listening and responding. And so I think that can still be true. Like that can still be a part of who I am, even though I'm improving all the time. But when I do musical improv and when I do rap improv, where we're just rapping the whole time, I do that with another team. The time just gets shorter and shorter and shorter. So musical improv, you have seconds to think of the what you're gonna do. And then when we're doing rap improv and we never stop rapping, there's no time to think of it.
Right.
You are just it's whatever was on your mind. You better say that out loud because you don't have any time to think of anything else.
Right.
Yeah.
Explain your rap show,
Yeah.
because you do a podcast as well of it. So this is half plug, but then also I want to
Sure.
like dive into this a little bit.
Yeah, so a few years ago, me and my friend Jack Norman, who's a longtime improviser all over LA, but we got connected because we were both interested in doing improv that had, basically we met up when he and his buddy Esau were like, anyone who wants to come over and freestyle, just like cypher with us, come over. And I was the only person that came. And so it was the three of us. And we just started like, what if we just like tried to do what we learned in UCB classes, but like while rapping. And that was really fun. And so, yeah, Jack and I still have a team called The Quickness where we try to never stop rapping the whole time. And we'll do sets that are 20 minutes, 25 minutes, 30 minutes, or even, 40 minutes.
And is it scenic or it's the two of you freestyling as yourselves topically?
It's a little bit of both. It kind of moves in and out of improv into like direct address. So sometimes we'll be doing a scene and what's a good example? Like if we'll do a scene and we land really hard on something maybe that's like a little edgy or inappropriate. Sometimes we'll lean right into it, break out of the scene and say to the audience like, that's right, we meant that. We're doubling down. And suddenly it's like almost like a song that is like a Run DMC, like, that's right. Hats every day, gotta wear it. Like, except probably more offensive. But yeah.
I'm very offended by that. A hat every day?
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know. I'm a hat 5 days a week kind of gal.
When we do it as a podcast, we'll chat for a bit and then we'll rap about whatever we were chatting about. But it's really just, honestly, it's because we're really good friends and we wanted an excuse to hang out.
When you're in those contexts, when your brain is like, when the train is coming too fast for you to put all the railroad tracks down in time, do you double down on like so you, in those cases when I'm freestyle rapping or when I have in the past for improv shows, you've got to just say a couplet. So you were talking about frosting the cupcakes, but then because cup rhymes with up, now you're talking about the movie Up or whatever. Do you follow those tangents in yours, or do you get the car back on the road you were on?
They're the equivalency of like shiny objects, I think, in improv, is that like that accidental rhyme that led you somewhere else. And I always think of it like the judgment I make in real time is just like, was that joyous or was it not? Because if it was just like a goofed rhyme that didn't do anything, like didn't activate anything in me that I thought was fun, then I'll let it go. Or I just won't, I'll prefer to stay on game and be funny rather than rhyme. There's definitely an order of operations. It's like you want it to be funny and rhyme, or you want it to be funny, or you want it to and then the last one is just rhyme, and then the last one is not funny and not rhyme.
Right.
Yeah.
And at least if I love this distinction, was that joyous? Meaning like, yeah, here's a new discovery. Does that tickle me enough to like abandon the road trip we were on for this side quest and then do the rest of the road trip? Or was it just filler rhyme and we got to get back on? Yeah, that's a great distinction.
Because really sometimes your rhyme will set you up into a whole new game accidentally, and it may not have a lot of juice, but it might have enough to be like, all right, let's do that for a little bit. But and sometimes there's a whole, you accidentally say like you rhyme President Lincoln, and then it's like, let's do a whole thing about President Lincoln,
right?
And like, and you can spend.
My bad. The setup was resident shrinking. I painted myself into a corner. My brain really wanted me to rap about President Lincoln.
Yeah. So, go to my therapist, resident shrinking. He tells me I'm like not that fun. Right. Yeah.
I love that too, like setting up an expectation and not doing it. I mean, it's like bad rap.
Exactly. That old game.
Yeah. Do you have favorite exercises or warm-ups or things that like get you in the mode for doing musical improv?
Yeah, I love with a team, I love to maybe do like a cypher before a show. That's all of us rhyming and rapping together, but we follow the fun. So that, I think, is a really great chance to remind ourselves that, especially in more structured shows, because a lot of musical improv is distinctly plot driven in a way that many traditional improv shows aren't.
Right.
Because some of the magic of doing musical improv, at least the way it's done at UCB and around LA, is doing shows that are, narrative.
Yeah.
So, which makes sense because musicals are such a narrative form.
Right.
And so when you're about to do a really narrative form, sometimes for me, it can be helpful to remember game and like how to have fun and follow fun, because otherwise you can end up sort of in your head. So in those ciphers, we just, somebody's, talks about they ate weird peanut butter, and then someone else is talking about the expired food in their fridge, which leads to feeling like their time with their relationship has expired, and so
more train of thought and really building off of each last thing.
Yes.
Because you're about to go do something that's more heady and plotty, and this kind of stokes the gameplay in
Yes.
you. Yeah.
I think a lot of newer players, including myself when I first started, felt a lot of pressure around narratives. Narrative shows, because they have to, make sense in quotes. But I think as I've played more shows, I've gotten more and more comfortable with the idea that audiences don't come to a show for it to make sense. They come to it for it to be funny.
Right.
And so if it does make sense, that's a happy accident almost. And I think we have such internal, all of us, senses of storytelling that we don't need to spend too much time training that up. But we
Right.
do need time to train up how to play game and do funny things off the cuff.
Yeah, that's a great point. I get in my head about narrative improv too, because I'm like, I don't know what the next right move is, or like what scene should come next. But when I play with people who have been doing it forever, they also have like that real internal meter of like, yeah, here's where we meet the villain, or like the obstacle or whatever. And
Yeah.
they're good at kind of guiding those initiations.
That's I think a combination of there being so many year veterans of those forms, and there's so many writers in the UCB
Yes.
community with a capital W who like write professionally.
Right.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, oh, got it. You're currently pitching screenplays to Pixar. Yeah, you know what happens
Yeah, exactly.
next in
You probably
this.
have a good sense of an act 3.
Yeah. What are some of the main things that you've learned or that have grown you during your time doing musical improv? Like, how have you opened your own skills more?
I think I'm doing, my best work now. I don't feel like I'm getting worse. So
That's
I think it's very good, I think. And I think I feel maybe I'm repeating myself, but like giving yourself, it's like having faith in your instinct, your instinctual brain a little more, because I think often my best work happens in like I said, a sort of semi-conscious way where I'm not necessarily trying to be like laugh out loud funny, but I'm really trying to engage, listen. Like I think as I do more work, a lot of stuff that used to be really conscious becomes subconscious, and then you're actually on stage listening, and that I think is when I'm at my best.
So your improvement that you're clocking here is basically just a function of time spent. Like the hours that you have put in by this point have made those like left brain conscious processes automatic. So now you can like, rather than concentrating on like steering the bike and pedaling, you can have a conversation while riding a bike, and the bike riding is automatic. And
I think a lot of comedy when you first start out is like a cult of personality. Like I remember coming to UCB as well as even collegiate improv, high school improv, feeling like I was never like one of those people that like had a big personality, like with capital letters, where it was like, they're gonna write for that person because they have such a big personality that I always know what to do with them. Like I
Yeah.
never felt like that guy. I felt like I was like maybe a little quieter, maybe more like I was like writing my songs, which were quite internal and wordy sometimes. And I didn't feel like even when I auditioned for Herald Night, which I did many times, never got on. I always was like, this feels like something that is for big personalities. Like if you can just show the theater or the tastemaker or whoever what it looks like, that like this person has a spark of genius,
Right.
you know, then it doesn't matter that you don't play game or whatever those things are. And I think my journey with comedy specifically has been just recognizing that like my internal way of seeing the world is quite brilliant and quite genius and quite fun. And so I don't need to be wackadoo off the walls to be like valid comedically. I don't need to be like even like physically big on stage to be valid comedically.
Well, and there is absolutely room for all of those different types and those mindsets and those like modes of artistry.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that like, because you don't feel like, you know, like that you're not like a big personality and you were more internal, that the self-conscious part of you that was like, I'm not getting cast, why, points out the opposite. That, you know, it's like, oh, they're too, it's because I'm not big enough, or I'm not like the star or whatever. Whereas a person who does have a big personality who's not getting cast looks at their opposite and goes, it's because I'm not like a heady writer and I can't. It's like we always look at the opposite and go, that's who has a home there. But it's like there is room for all of us. Yeah,
because I have heard about the you know, people feeling like the only UCB type that fits, or you know, we don't have to make this about UCB, but like comedy type that can thrive in comedy in general is like one where you're sort of like, you wear glasses and white Converse and you're a boy and you're a white boy and like you have a scruffy beard and you write your Star Wars jokes, right? Like, and so I think it's like we were talking about in Justification, it's like just having faith in yourself, like faith in your own specialness and like your value in being there on that stage, having your particular thoughts and perspectives, I think is like a lot of times, at least has been my silver bullet.
Yeah.
More so than any like one rule or technique or practice.
Yeah. I love that. What vision, if you were to have one, do you have for the future of musical improv?
Well, at least at the theaters, I mean, I only really do shows at UCB right now in LA in 2024, late 2024. But the theater's more supportive of musical improv than it's ever been. The current like 80s and leadership are like, so a few years ago, you know, you wouldn't really notice this if you weren't like deep in the musical improv scene in LA, but there were kind of only like 2 games in town, and they were they shared a lot of cast, and so if you were trying to like do work in that scene, it was really hard to like feel like there was a space for you.
Yeah.
And now I host a jam at the theater along with Andrew Young and Greg Smith, Tara Copeland, and Ashley Ward. And we also...
When is that? It's a musical theater or a musical
it's a
improv
musical
jam?
improv jam, yeah. So anyone who like wants to dip their toe could definitely come. It's third Fridays at 5:30 p.m.
Great.
Yeah.
Just show up to UCB and do it. Yeah,
but
that's
definitely
great.
check the Annex schedule in case I said that wrong.
Oh, but it's at the Annex.
It's at the...
or is it
no,
at
it's
Franklin?
it's at Franklin. Yeah,
okay.
thanks for clarifying.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there's also multiple like there's these new Sing Out Louise teams, which are like essentially house teams that have been like kind of brought in from outside the theater. Big 8-person teams full of like a lot of new players who are really great, but maybe haven't had their like chance to do their first show yet.
Yeah.
And there's also just a lot of new programming. There's Dramatique. There's my show, the musical version. There's Hump Night, which is another show I do. Yeah, there's like a lot of... So in terms of what I see in the future, I think it would be... I don't know. I think it's definitely growing as a form that people are aware of in the world. I think, you know, Dropout has had such an effect on how people perceive improv. And there's Zach Reno and Jess McKenna have an awesome show on Dropout. I got to guest on that. Really great show. Good vibe.
Yeah.
Like helping people know what that is. I would love to see even more of that. I don't think there's too much musical improv right now. I
Yeah.
still think for all it's doing in LA, it's still like such a deep cut form for most
Yes.
people.
Well, if we look at if we look at what it kind of used to be as like step one, and this is like we're in step two, which is mass proliferation of musical improv. The let's like get everybody in here. What's next? Like, do you think the form itself can be innovated, or like what would you like to see happening as a result of all of this flood of genius and perspectives? And
I think because it's been new for a while, there's been a lot of like formalization of it. There's been a lot of like making rules and making guidelines and making patterns for the sake of training. What I am particularly interested in is, what are players going to do after they've done 500 of those shows? Because I think I'm interested in Will Hines had a blog post, and now I'm showing my real improv nerd, where he talked about like we do a lot of in coaching about like raising the floor, but what about like raising the ceiling of like what can this be? So I would love to see raising the ceiling of like some shows have been around a long time. They're very like sure about what they are. I'd love to see new forms that don't seek to emulate what's come before, but instead try brand new things.
Yep.
I really would like to put on a show at some point in the future where all the improvisers on stage are also self-accompanying, and so it's a fully improvised like
a
recording
musical,
studio or like concert,
like a band,
like a true band where
improvised
everyone is at a musical level where they can play an instrument and improvise.
Call me. I'll be your rhythm guitarist.
Perfect.
I love this. Yeah.
But like an idea like that where it's like, oh wow, like how far can we push this?
Yeah.
How great can we be?
Yes.
So I believe there's like, it's still such a fledgling form. I mean, improv is such a fledgling form, right? Like what, 50 years maybe?
Right.
In terms of an
Well,
art,
yeah,
70
70 plus. Yeah.
I mean, as an art style, that is new,
right.
compared to like, I don't know, painting.
Yeah.
So there's much to uncover still.
Yeah. Improv as we know it, with like we're doing sort of more free form scenes. And yeah, I mean, I'm only in my head because John Bowie was just in here recording, and he pointed out that Commedia dell'arte like 500 years ago was doing like improvised things, but they were still improvising with like character archetypes that they knew what they were. So they had kind of planned scenarios that they would go off. But
Yeah.
yes, it is a very young art form that now I think is really going to be exponentially launched forward because we have the internet and because we have like the ability to travel and see more things and connect with each other. It's like things that used to be siloed, for decades in their own cities or their own communities are now all cross-pollinating.
I've also listened to enough episodes of your pod now to know that a common thread among many of your guests has been that there was someone early in their lives who introduced them to this thing.
Yeah.
I had someone like that too, of course.
Who was it?
It was a middle school theater teacher. So it's remarkable how common it is for someone in your early, in the story of improvisers I've met as well, to have someone early in their life say like, have you heard of this like bizarro thing? And instill that early love of it. And I think you're absolutely right that when anyone can like Google like makeup games at home,
Right.
like, or whatever, like made
or
up.
see examples of it on TikTok. Like they're scrolling through and they see like a dropout game and they're like,
Yeah.
oh, we can do that
Yeah.
at
Or,
high school or whatever. Yeah.
on Netflix, we're seeing improv specials.
Yeah.
Like there's, I think it's reaching a level that like there's going to be, I just think it isn't going to feel like an outside thing. I think it's pretty much like permeated culture now, and so the question becomes like, how will people explode it, and what will be the anti-improv, and what will be like I feel like there have been movements, but I feel like, I don't know, there could be like something really. I remain really excited about what could come up. I just think there's a lot of smart people doing good work and just making me laugh a lot.
Yeah. Can we end on some rapid fire questions?
I'm ready.
Or is there anything that we didn't hit that we need to? That's like, because you said you've been thinking a lot about this in prep for this. Is there anything?
No, I think we covered everything. I wish I could think of more deep musical improvs. I'm trying to think what I would want to hear if I was listening. I was like, Philip knows some stuff about musical improv. Nope.
Nope.
Nope. Nope.
You just interviewed yourself and yourself said, nope. Great. What are your favorite types of scenes to do?
Oh, my favorite types of, this is rapid fire.
Yeah.
I'm feeling the heat. My favorite types of scenes to do are,
Scenes or improvised songs?
Yeah, I'm going to choose
it
songs.
Could be songs, yeah.
I love when you get thrown into a solo at the last minute because, and it's only happened to me a couple times in shows. I love doing duets and but every once in a while, and I also love watching these the most from other people. You get thrown in the spotlight, you know your game really clearly, but like it's all you.
Yeah.
So it's like you have to take the stage and you have to claim it really, really hard. Like it's like a burlesque number or whatever it is. Like it's all you. I think that those are really, really fun.
Tapping into that latent big personality that's maybe in your
my
waiting in the
id,
wings. Yeah.
Or whichever the other one is.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
What is a genre of musical theater that you love so much, or like a style of, like it could be like an era of musical theater or a specific composer that, like, if you could do a musical improv show that was like kind of all an homage to that style or that composer, what would it be?
Oh my God. It would be nearly impossible, but many, many times I have dreamed about, working with a team to do like a Sondheim style musical, because it Sondheim is so deeply like written that it's borderline impossible. But if they can improvise Shakespeare, I think we can improvise Sondheim. We just have to find people who have like that deep love and understanding of it.
I just rewatched the documentary that's like the recording of the company.
Co-op?
Yeah, no, that's the parody of it. But Company.
Yeah, I rewatched that recently too.
Yeah, it's so good. The Elaine Stritch, like watching her journey, and also like she does the first take in there, and I'm like, oh, it's brilliant.
And then they go,
like,
it's a little flat.
Yeah, do it again, but sing it.
Can we try it again, but this time not so flat, Elaine?
And she's like
magic.
Putting her soul on this microphone,
Yeah.
and they're like, yeah, that's not going to work. And he goes, people have been looking forward to this song in the whole album, and we need to have it work. And she's like, what?
Yeah. It's also amazing to see young Elaine Stritch, because she's so Elaine Stritch,
right?
Despite being young, she has like kind of this. She's so powerful.
Powerful.
You realize like when you talk about star quality,
yes,
like talk about there's the cast is awesome, and then there's Elaine Stritch,
right? She's like
holy.
over and above this awesome, yeah. But I forgot how much I loved the music of that show, and Sondheim is he's almost rebelling against musical theater in the way he writes.
Yes.
It's like, no, I'm gonna fuck with the rhythms, and I'm gonna have this chord be a little discordant, and it's like he's kind of like,
Oh, he's so brilliant. I mean, there's too much that's been written and said about him, but like to add to it, being able to.
I was gonna say, could you shut up?
Yeah, could you shut the hell up about Sondheim? No.
Nope.
Once again, nope.
Yeah.
It would be really fun to try and improvise in that style, if only because for people who love Sondheim, it would be so fun and so joyous.
Yeah. Is there anything that scares you in improv or in performance in general?
Oh yes. I get scared of being a stage hog or taking up too much air. That scares me. I have learned to play hard from and to play with confidence and robustness in a show. But I remember in college, some like member of my team took me aside and was like, "Hey man, like make sure you leave some space for the other players. And I was like, ugh! Like, it's like, cool, I'm going to like remember that for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think it's funny because when I watch my favorite players play together, I don't think they like worry about that too much because they trust each other, and yet that is still a fear I hold about like just look around, pay attention, you know. But as I said, my favorite type of song is where no one else is fucking involved and it's all me and no one else has to do anything.
I mean, maybe that's part of why is because you don't have to have that other fear running because you are just in the spotlight and it's what the show demands.
Yeah. I also just to go back to that question, the reason I love them and I love watching them is the second verse, because in the second verse you're out of ideas. You did all your ideas, and so then you're seeing true musical improv in that it's like it's really the tip of the brain, and that's like where I think a lot of the most fun happens,
where you're surprising yourself and you're just jumping off the cliff.
You're really
great.
Yeah, exactly, because like normally in many improv scenes, like one person will take a verse, another person will take another verse, so you share the load, you share the burden of thinking of fun things, of thinking of good jokes. But in a solo, you really no one else, you really have to do it, and it's fun to see where people's minds go. It's
totally
so,
what am I accessing right now? And the last question is, what pointers do you have for people who are like just starting out in musical improv?
Just that there's room for you, whatever your take is. You don't have to like look a certain way or think a certain way to be funny, and to be funny at UCB where they have all these rules and classes, and you know they're gonna teach you how to be funny. Like, you know, I just think you are enough. You're enough.
Wow. I'm enough.
Yeah.
Nope. From the makers of Nope.
Yeah, comes
you are enough.
Nope.
Right. You are enough. Nope. What would you like to plug?
Well, since this is podcast land, I have a podcast called The Quickness. It's the yapping and rapping podcast with me and my friend Jack Norman. And then I have a podcast that I wish I updated as often as you do yours, which is called The Musical Version, which is the podcast taping version of our live show at UCB. And both are musical improv podcasts. So if you've enjoyed this episode, you might enjoy those podcasts.
That's great. And tell them where they can buy your music as well, since we're playing a little bit of that.
Yeah, absolutely. You can check out my music for streaming or purchase pretty much anywhere you listen to music. If you want to buy it directly, that's at philiplabus.com. And my name is spelled like it is in the episode title.
Great. Perfect. Thank you so much for this. This was awesome.
Thank you. This was terrific.
If you like this podcast, you can support us and get a ton of bonus content over at yesalso.supercast.com. If you have a question about improv that you'd like us to answer on one of our future Q&A episodes, send it on over to yesalsopod@gmail.com. Remember to follow us on Instagram at yesalsopod, and keep sharing us with your improv communities. We love the love. If you're a theater who would like to host us for a live recording and improv show, let us know at yesalsopod@gmail.com. A huge shout out to Ryan Rosenberg, who produced this thing with his generous help and his unlimited knowledge about all things podcast. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week. No, we won't, Susie. That's not how podcasts work. They will see. They won't even see us. They will listen to us. So it's actually the opposite of both things you said. Thanks for listening, and you will listen to us next week. Maybe. We don't know.